everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sword and Strategy, the podcast where we talk about business and leadership and all things like that. As always, I'm Paul Paris, and with me is Josh Holmes. Let's just get into it today, Josh.
Hey. So we're just going to jump right into it. Let's just jump right into it.
Dude, that's what leadership
Dive
is.
in, feet
Last time
first.
we talked a little bit about like just being thrown to the wolves, like thrown in. So, hey, let's start with that. Just jump on in, Josh.
So this episode is about fear and then thriving as a manager. So those two do not go together. And so many managers and leaders out there are just surviving. That's what they do. They're thrown into it. They do the best they can, but they're just getting by day to day. And we hope to bring you to a thriving point. So let's talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about me. Obviously, I can't talk on behalf of Paul. But for me...
But it might be weird.
We talked about how, on the last episode, about how I was naturally... it just felt like it was supposed to happen that way.
Natural born
like
leader.
It's where I was supposed to be. And the crazy thing is, through a majority of my career, I always felt that way. I always felt comfortable in my role and comfortable taking that role on whatever company I worked for. And I did management in several different companies. However, when that title is ripped out from under you, whether there be a reason or no reason, it doesn't really matter. You feel that's when fear starts to take over. And that happened to me. So once it did, fear consumed me because something that felt so natural. And
I'm interrupting you, sir.
Yes.
I want some background here. So how long, so you're talking about a time when you were a manager, you were a leader, and it got ripped out from under you.
Just like a rug.
Okay. So what does that mean?
So I was let go. Completely. So not only was I taken out of a leadership role, I was taken out of a job altogether. And coming from a place of this feels natural to, oh, good goggly googly moogly. What happened? What did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? And so fear just kind of shrouded over me at that point, to a point where I was second guessing everything that I knew. I mean, coming from a place where people told you were a great leader, you should do classes on leadership. You should, all this stuff to, you're not good enough. Bye. It will mess with you, and you've got to have a strong mental fortitude to get through that. And I don't know that I was prepared for that at all.
Sure. So like you went from like leadership is a confidence. I feel like I got this, to then all of a sudden going to, am I really that good? Right? Was my confidence misplaced? Right? Something like that, where there was more fear and anxiety, into the role, than where you started.
Correct. That's exactly how it felt. And that's exactly the place I was in, is it's just this dark, I'm supposed to provide, I'm supposed to do. So it wasn't just getting taken out of leadership. It was getting taken out of everything. Like it just all fell apart. And so it was very easy opening for fear to overcome the things that I knew about myself and just start wreaking havoc. And that's what it'll do. Fear will just wreak havoc on your mental state, ups and downs and ins and outs. And it was just a dark place to be.
Yeah, I think anytime like you have, it was a black pool. Anytime you have like that opportunity where you're leading people, and then that rug gets ripped out, it shakes your confidence. Like it shakes everything. Not only just your confidence in managing people or being a leader with that company, but actually it can have the effect of doing it on your personal life, right? And how you go about it. Maybe I'm not the leader that I thought I was at home. Maybe this, like how people are affected by jobs and by management, really affects us at home, I think. And, being a leader is not just about showing up for the company that you work for. Being a leader is your family. And if you don't have a family, if it's just you, it's still leading yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's your friend group. It's the community you find yourself in, the people around you that you kind of do life, whether indirectly or directly with. Like there's so much that it kind of goes to that can really rock your world
Yeah.
when you're not there, and it can be hard to battle back from that, and I've got a completely kind of opposite thing because I started with fear and then some other things happen. But how did you like overcome that, bro? Like, how have you been able to just understand that leadership isn't about what somebody else necessarily thinks of you or how you did? And I happen to know your story, right? I know it
Right.
very well. I know it intimately. Like, I know what happened wasn't because you had poor leadership. It wasn't an
Right.
indictment on your leadership, right? So what do you do to get your confidence back?
So the first thing I would suggest that I did, and I would suggest to people, is you got to get out of your head. Stop listening to yourself, for one thing. Whether you're telling yourself good stuff or bad stuff, you got to stop listening to yourself
I
at
don't
that
like to hear my
moment.
own voice sometimes,
So, and then I started listening to those people that knew me best. Y'all, you and my wife, family, friends, people that knew who I was before this happened and who I was capable of being after I got through it. And in turn, listening to them, my true voice started to come back. I was like, okay, this was just, first of all, everything's just business at the end of the day. And there's never really anything personal about it.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I struggled to come to grips with that. And I finally was like, look, it's just business. That's all it is. It's any decision that's ever made is just business. And it's people trying to do their best to run their business. So once I started to come into that, I was able to push my confidence back up and push the fear back down. Until I finally am at a better place and able to come to grips with it, and then moved on to the next big thing.
Yeah, sure. I think so many companies out there tout leadership. We want good leaders. We want this. We want that. We want people of integrity, right? We want people that are going to lead confidently and take us to new heights. You hear that stuff all the time with businesses. But really, I think a lot of companies out there don't want to take the time that it takes, to mold leaders. They don't take the time to understand what actually wanting a leader means. When in actuality, when they say we want leaders that do this, they just want a boss that does whatever they say they're going to do. Right? They want somebody who's, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, I'm going to go do this, whether it's right or wrong. They just want somebody who will listen and obey. A lot of times obedience is what they look for in leadership rather than integrity or rather than trust or honesty. I'm telling you, you go do it. You're a great boss.
And that comes across in a lot of companies that believe that they know it better than somebody else does. And that's
sure.
Where it kind of falls into place where, well, I'll just tell them how to do it or what to do because I already know how to do it. I've been there, done that. I've been in that role before or whatever. Now they're in that role. So I'm just going to tell them how to do it instead of allowing that person to kind of give that position its own spin. And that's scary to do as a business or as, in leadership when you have somebody, when you actually not just have employees under you, but you have leaders under you that are leading their own teams. It's hard to be like, let me just back off, hands off, let them do their thing. They may come up with something different. That is hard to do. And I get that. Sure. But you've got to allow it to happen. You've got to allow people to, because that's part of fear too. It's fear of the unknown. It's fear of, well, I'm putting them in this role, but I really think I need to tell them what to do. Otherwise, it's never going to get done right. And so that's a part of fear as well. And so you're casting your fears onto other leaders, and now they're just going to do it the way you do it, and there may be a better way.
Yeah, it's leaders think for themselves, right? Leaders, they have company goals in mind, and as a leader, you can't just look at what's happening in this moment, right? You have to look at what's happening around me, right? What's happening all around as I smash my mic here. What's happening all around us, and what are we doing today, and how does that going to affect what we do tomorrow? How does that affect what we do in a month? Right? What are some of the things that I'm trying to help get accomplished? How is that going to set my team up, my company up for success 90 days down the road? Right. And I think there's so many times, and it's easy to fall into this, whether you're a boss, leader, manager, whatever. It's easy to fall into I just got to get this done today. And if I do this, everything's great.
Right.
I'll wake up and deal with the next problem tomorrow. But as a leader, we're required to be like, you have to be on, right? You have to understand what's happening around you and sense stuff before they become problems, right? You can't sit back and just go, well, this day was a successful day. Can I get my little gold star sticker like we did back in elementary school, right on my chest? We should still give gold star stickers. Or better yet, they should do those personal pan pizzas they used to do at Pizza Hut. You know what I'm saying? Like you get something good at school, you read a book at school, you get a personal pan pizza. Let's do it.
I would have read a lot more books. Because I love
adult.
me some pizza. Yep.
Right.
People start giving me pieces of pizza for reading books. Look out, Harry Potter. Here I come.
But like, you're so focused on getting done what's in front of you that you're not focused on what's actually going to happen as a result of it. Or if you just manage, right? You're just a boss over people, and you're not investing in the people or investing in what they need or how they are. Pretty soon you're going to have employees that start to turn into maybe not good employees, or people that turn into, well, the company doesn't care about me. My boss doesn't care about me. They see me going through this, right? It's all these things that keep twisting, all these things that as a leader, you have to wear glasses that see all around.
Right.
You can't
just
have
your head on a swivel.
You do. And I think it's important. Something you said before, and I know we're talking business and all this, but the community around you, you had talked about like, man, whenever this thing happened, one of the ways I was able to overcome the fear of how things were, or how things, what it was through the community around me, people that knew me best. And I don't think that can be overstated enough. Like that idea, that topic of community and having people around you in a business setting, maybe it's your business mentor, right? Maybe it's a leader within the company that wasn't directly your boss, right? Maybe it was other employees, right? Maybe other peers. Maybe it was somebody completely outside of that. Maybe it was family. Maybe it was friends. But that idea of community is something I'd love to explore a little bit with you, Josh. Kind of get more of your thoughts on community, because I think community is important to leadership.
It is, and it's important to defeating the negative side to life. I mean, because fear is just a mindset. It's not a real thing. So, in my case, the community side of it, one, they screamed the loudest. Which was great. They screamed louder than anything in my mind, which was great. And in some cases, it was with y'all specifically, it was a stop. Listen to what we're telling you. We know how you are. We know who you are.
Yeah.
Get out of this. Get out of this slump. Prayer, God.
Yeah.
If you're listening in, you may not feel in that way. You may not be a religious person, but for me, that was part of my community as well.
Absolutely.
So having those aspects and those things to turn to, and even when I tried to converge back into myself, start listening to the wrong things, and this was not an overnight process, obviously. It took time and discipline, self-discipline if I started walking down that path of fear, anxiety, or whatever it may be, because I had lost what I felt like made me a model employee or what I was supposed to be doing,
right? I
had to self-correct. Otherwise, you start causing harm to your mind. And when you start causing harm to your mind, then it's just a snowball effect at that point. So having that community of people, and you may be thinking to yourself, well, I don't have a community of people. It can be one. It can be one person. That's your community. It can be God. That could be the only one for you. That's your community. But there's gonna have to be somebody. There has to be somebody. You can't do it yourself. Because I was a firm believer of I can do it myself.
Sure. I think it's really important to note that leadership right? Business, community leadership, whatever. Leadership is not a solo endeavor.
No.
It doesn't matter if you're the top of a company, right? If you're the head honcho, right? It doesn't matter if, it doesn't matter whatever situation you're in, leadership and being in a position of leadership is not a solo endeavor. It's not just you.
Right.
You've got the people around you, the people you manage, the people that look up to you, right? Maybe you have bosses, sure, but then that community is so important because we are really good at telling ourselves all sorts of lies, right? We're really good at telling ourselves we haven't done this, we haven't done this. Oh, we're not that good, we're not that good. And words are powerful, bro. Like words are powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start telling yourself, I'm not as good of a leader as I thought I was because of a situation, however untrue that might be, it will begin to feel like truth in your mind. And then you'll take on that persona, right? And it's important to try to combat those types of words and that thought pattern. But that's really hard to do on your own.
And
the community is so good.
To give it a visual perspective of where I was being a kid from the 80s and 90s, growing up in that generation. Right. If you've ever seen The Never Ending Story, I was Artax. I was going down.
Singing the song.
I was despair, and I was sinking into the mud.
And the horse?
Yeah, I was Artax.
Okay.
I was Artax, the horse.
Spoiler alert for people who haven't seen a movie from the 80s.
Oh, God, if you hadn't seen The Never Ending Story, I feel sorry for you. Your life is not where it needs to be. But that's kind of what it felt like. Is the deeper you get into it, the more you start to fear. That's the thing about fear. The more of it, the more piles on. The more you allow it in, the deeper it gets. So you've really got to do some strong work when you get towards the bottom. But it's all about planting your feet and pushing. I mean, progress is forward progress. Doesn't matter if you're crawling, rolling, whatever it is. And that's what I had to start doing again is developing forward progress. Forward memento.
The good thing about you is you're not the horse, because spoiler alert, and the bane of like mental health for every kid in the 80s that watched that movie when they were a kid, the horse freaking dies, right? It gets swallowed up, and then the kid's like wandering around for the wolf of the world to eat him or whatever it is. Like, it's the saddest movie ever as a kid, right? Thankfully that's not your story.
But no, right? No, I did eventually scream a name. So,
I think, but that's, again, you had people to help lift you out. Of that mire, if you will. Like, I looking at this thing, I want to say this quote: where there is no guidance, people fall, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety.
I like that.
That's really important. And it's important to know as a leader, I think, that no matter if you feel like you've made it to the top or you're scared to death like I was when I started, there's always room to grow and to listen to other people, whether good or bad and different. Right?
How did you overcome yours?
Oh, I used a lot so I used to joke around with my teams, and every time they would say, "Hey, how do you do this?" I would always use the magic phrase "smoke and mirrors." I would say, "Oh, it's all smoke and mirrors. It looks like I'm doing really well, but inside
it's an illusion."
Yeah, it's all an illusion. But no, I do that to as a joke to kind of ease tension. But for me, it kind of goes back to what you were saying. I changed my inner dialogue, right? When I started that job, I talked about it in the last episode. I went in, I'm scared to death. They're all going to judge me. I knew it. In fact, they told me when I walked in, they told me the first day, "We looked you up before we found your name. We looked you up on the internet." And I thought, that's scary as crap. Thanks for that. I don't know what you found. And you're not the person we thought you were when you walked in, And I was like, oh, well, crap. They're already judging me for my leadership abilities. Yeah. And so immediately.
No pressure.
No pressure. I had to really focus on seeing myself as worthy, right? I had to go, okay, when I first started, I'm not worthy. I talked about that last week. I talked about they made the wrong choice. In fact, the interview I had for my first managerial job, I'm on my final interview, and the first words out of the director of the whole group said, "You can't do this job. I don't actually believe in you. I don't see why we would even pick you."
Thanks.
And I'm like, "Thank you." Like,
Thanks for the vote of confidence.
And you know
You're
what?
the best.
I've actually had that like 3 different times. I've had
Holy
managers tell me
crap.
that. And that'll do something. So of course I get the job. I'm shocked because, hey, this manager said I don't know what I'm doing. I go into it scared to death. I see people are judging me. I'm worried about it. So where do I find my worth? But like you said, I had to change what I thought about myself in that moment. I had to take every bit of it out and just think, how do I get through this day? Early stages, I'm focused on today. I'm not focused on the big picture. Let me just focus on today. Let me focus on this hour and get through it. But to constantly tell myself, you can do this. And when an employee came to me with an issue and I answered it and they were okay with it, like it made me go, oh, I can do this. Like every little thing like that helped. And I realized that once I'm helping my employees, which happened real quick, my goal wasn't to help the company. My goal was then, how do I help them be the best version of themselves?
Absolutely.
Right? How do I do that? And to do that, I need to be the best version of myself at all possible when I come. But even if I'm not, I need to still help them to become the best version of themselves. And so because I spent that first week, again, my boss leaves town. See you later, dude. Peace out. And I'm like, great. I'm going to get fired the first week. Like this sucks, right? That's what's going to happen. And instead, I sit down with that team and just get to know them, do the job they're doing, and realize these are really good people that are all trying to make a living. Now they're looking to me to do this. All I need to do is to be the best version of myself for them and help them to be the best version of themselves for each other in the company. Whether that's actually for work-related purposes or not, but just to treat them with respect and honor them and honor their agency, like who they are as people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the more I did that, the more I started to understand what drove each person. All of the fear and anxiety went away because when I first started, it was about me. I can't do this.
Right.
I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. It's all me, 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 me. But when you realize as a leader, it has nothing to do with you. It's about your people.
Right.
It's about how they become successful, right? How they make more money. And that became my driving motivator and factor. It became, how do I help them make themselves and the company more money so we're all relevant still, right? And we can keep going.
Right.
And so I had to do a complete shift in mindset and really take myself out of the picture. And that's really hard to do. When you're going into a role where you're leading, managing, whatever, it's easy to say, I'm the boss, I've got this, listen to me. But I found for me, I had to take myself out of the way, get out of my own head, get out of the way and let them thrive. Now, I also, to your point, had a community around me. I had a wife that was constantly encouraging me. You got this. I know you got this. Friends that did the same, right? And then later on, work peers and buddies and managers and leaders that did the same. So the community was huge for me. Getting through that,
Yeah. And we could probably both sit here and list off a huge amount of people. And I for one, thank those people. Because in your darkest times, that community they bring the sword and shield and just hack away at everything bothering you. And it gives you a chance to breathe. And, like with most things, it's like eating an elephant. You can't eat an elephant one bite.
Yep.
You got to take a bite at a time.
Have you seen some people's mouths? There's some big mouth people out there. Let's just be real.
And I'm sure elephants wouldn't taste very good. But if you wanted to eat one, you'd have to take it one bite at a time.
Yeah.
It's day by day. It's a process. It's self-discipline, self-reflecting.
I think what you speak to there is humanity, like treating people with humanity. I think one thing that I saw too was happy employees typically make more successful employees and make more productive employees.
That's true.
And you don't have, as a leader, to be able to show some humanity, to show some vulnerability, to admit when you're wrong. That's a whole topic like we could talk about for a long time. Admitting when you're wrong and just show the human side of you to people, or to even care about who they are, right? If they're dealing with the difficulty, give them the space to deal with that difficulty within reason, right?
Right.
If somebody's having a headache and they're like, hey, I need to take off the next 3 weeks because of it. No, right? We got some different there. But if somebody's struggling with a real life issue, right? Sometimes you got to take off the boss hat and the manager hat and put on the human decency hat, right? The human, I care about you as a person. What can I do to help? Right.
Right.
Within
And
limits,
one of the,
there's different stuff, but
one of the big things about that leadership role, and this is something we'll talk about later on too, is like what you're talking about with the human decency side of it. You're not necessarily keeping them anchored to you for the rest of their career. You're wanting them to spread, you want to do your part to grow them so that they can achieve the goals they want to achieve in their life, whether that's working
right.
for you at this company or if that's going out and doing their own thing at a different company.
Right.
Like that, it should never be your goal to be like, I'm only going to train you to be here for the rest of your existence. You're welcome.
No, I think every human, right, has inherent dignity and agency to them. And I think when you're a boss, like we talked about boss versus manager, we haven't really dove into that fully, but we will throughout time. But I think when you're just a boss and you're going for numbers, people lose their inherent dignity. People lose their agency because now they're just a number to you. You represent this sales goal. You represent this, operations goal. And if you don't hit that, you're not worth it to me. And that's the world I feel like most bosses with that title live in. And that's what separates a leader from a boss or a manager, is they see that in people. Now, sure, you have employees that may not be able to do the job the way you need them to, whether you trained them and done all the stuff and they still aren't working. There's people that you have to part with, and you get that. Right. But investing in people, right, is so important. And I know I found that early on, the more I did that and just talked to them, the more confidence it gave me, to come out and be a leader to my people. You know what I mean?
So many people look at that investing part. You touched on that a little bit. I don't want to invest in somebody and waste time and company money investing in this person that just not going to be able to do it anyway. Well, how do you know? How do you know what they're going to become if you're not investing in them anyway? Just because they're 5 minutes late every day, 10 minutes late every day. Stuff like that can be fixed if you take the time and give the right motivation to the right person. But again, what works for Joe may not work for Jill. You have to find what motivates them. And yes, you're right. Sometimes you'll just eventually have to part ways. It's just never going to click at this time. It may click for them somewhere down the road or at a different company, or maybe you're just not the person to make it click for them. That's something they have to find themselves. But if you can help them find that right motivation, because they have fear too. We're talking about fear on the manager, but there's fear for employees as well.
Sure. Oh,
the
100%.
Next paycheck, bills, kids, my car's any day now. My car's going to be trash, and I'm not going to be able to get to work. Those kind of things, are constantly. So they're living a life of fear as well.
Right.
So the last thing they want to do is be afraid of work, be afraid of their job, be afraid of their career. So don't be a tyrant because you're afraid, because you got people that come in, you just trickle that fear down to them. And now you've got this toxic team that may hit numbers. They may hit the numbers you're wanting, but what if they were able to go above and beyond? Because they had the right leader with the right motivation, had the right mentality.
I think that's so important. And, that's how you thrive, is through other people or through leading other people in ways that help them become more than they thought they could. Companies right now are plagued. Let's use that word. Let's use plagued in as big of a sense as you want to use it, with longevity issues for employees. Employees cut and run. Pressure may get too hard, too heavy at times, right? Their boss isn't really helping them much, whatever the case is. Longevity it feels like a lost art, if you will, to companies anymore. People are really, especially this day and age, it feels like people are really quick to cut and run. I don't know how many guys I have hired in the last 5 years, so real recent, that you hire them and then within a week they're like, peace out. And you're like, whoa, what happened? So there's a cultural thing with that, but longevity is key. And I think what you said before, something I want to touch on for a second, I don't think that when you're leading a company and you have employees under you, do you really want everybody, do you want people to be there? Sure. Hiring is a long process. It can be arduous. It can be difficult. So you want people to do well and stay. But you also need to realize that people have their own goals. Just because your goal as a leader is we need to hit these things or do this, doesn't mean that's their goal. What if their career goal is something else? So, but when you as a leader can understand that, not with the intention of, I'm going to train you up so you definitely leave, I want you out of here, right? But although I did tell that to somebody, one of my last roles, I did tell one of my employees, when we do your yearly review next year, actually I told it to multiple. I said, when we do your yearly review next year, I don't want to even see your face. I don't want you to be here. But what they knew that meant was I wanted them to get promoted into a different role with the company and not still doing the same thing they had been.
It's just like, man, that was hardcore, Paul. Just fire somebody.
Every time I said that, they would
look
at me, but they
face.
knew me well enough that they knew what I was talking about.
Yeah.
But so many people, right? It's important to manage or to lead people in what they need, right? And for them not to be scared if their trajectory at a company or in life is not what you also think it is for them.
Right.
That was really bad grammar right there, but I think you know what I'm talking about. I just learned it a couple weeks ago, but like I had an employee that I spent a lot of time with my first early days. Great employee. She was wonderful. She did her job. I knew there was something else for her. And I told every employee, if you ever feel like you need to leave, let's talk. And if you're leaving to better yourself for a better job and it's going to go, I'll be your biggest cheerleader, right? I'll be here to support you and I can't wait. If you're leaving because you don't like me or you're leaving for a crappier job with a worse situation for your family, let's figure something out first before you go. Let's talk.
Right. And that needs to be something that people bring to the table is a redefining of business versus personal. I kind of talked on that a little bit, but there's a lot of companies out there that when somebody wants to leave, they're just fine, you leave then. I didn't need you anyway. I didn't even like you. You're a terrible employee. Hold up. Let's slow down. Slow down a little bit. Man. You're ugly. I didn't want you around. But so
you're hideous.
It's much better, like you said, if you're ever wanting to leave for a negative reason, then we need to have a conversation. That's why I liked having those one-on-ones with my employees. Because one, annual reviews are great, but it's never good to do an annual review if you haven't talked to that employee all year long. Because then you're going to be like, by the way, you're not getting a raise and this annual review is going to be terrible because you haven't done your job. Well, did they know?
Right.
Did they know they weren't doing their job?
Yeah, dude, it's like you kind of hit it on the head there. There's employees I have seen that I come into a situation. I'm like, oh, when was the last time you talked to your manager about how you're doing? My last yearly review. And I'll look at numbers and they're awful. And I'm like, oh,
well, the next one's not going to be better.
Broham, let's talk through this. But what was your assignment then? Oh, they told me I was doing good. Oh, okay.
Somebody doesn't like conflict management.
Yeah, that's again a huge topic to get to. But in the case of that employee, like I was talking about, eventually a job came up within the company that she wanted to do. It was going to pay her a little bit more money. I recommended her for the job, but she was still scared to tell me, hey, I'm going to do this. And I said, go. Like, I'll even go walk over to that office and I'll tell them what's up, that they better hire you. And I did. That girl now is thriving. She found her spot. She found what she's supposed to do and is now leading a whole branch. Like, she is thriving, right? But there's so many cases out there of people that if they are just given the chance to flourish, if they're given the chance to open up, like a flower, open up, this is my flower interpretation here. I don't know what flower looks like that, but if they're given that opportunity and that safety, that space to do that, it's amazing what people can accomplish.
Yeah, like I said, you may have people that are hitting goals, but could they blow those goals out of the water with the right motivation? Are they just hitting a number because I can, or are they hitting a number because I want to, and I want to blow that number out of the water? Yeah. Like you have, like sometimes it's not always about they're doing a good job, they're doing good enough, so we don't ever encourage them or anything like that. With that encouragement, we kind of got off topic here, but with that encouragement, they may just destroy stuff for you in a good way, which is, or they may destroy the whole thing.
Oh, it's
But
terrible.
that's something you're not going to know if you're not investing in your people.
Yeah. And I think that's where, to kind of reel it back to what we were talking about, if you are living out of fear, right? If you are looking inward and I can't do this, I am not the man, the woman, the person for the job. I can't do this. You're not going to be able to fully function in those opportunities to help others thrive.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, what you're going to do is you're going to end up limiting somebody else's potential. Let's take ourselves out of the situation, right? When you lead out of fear of what people think of you, of how your employees think of you, right? When you lead in that vein of thought, inevitably it's not you. You suffer, sure, but you don't suffer the most. It's the people who report to you, the people who look up to you, your peers, that suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Their potential is hindered because your inability to get over your fear.
So you really handcuff yourself and really damage your teams, your company, and stuff like that. If you are trying, if you think you're thriving and you're just surviving because you're in fear, like you really are crutching yourself to your capabilities, and in turn just ruining it for your teams.
Yeah, I think you started off this whole conversation with how to survive, or people who are surviving, but how to get out of survival mode into thrival mode. That's not even a word, but let's just go with it. How to do that, right? That's
Well,
a
I like
really
to
horrible
thrival
word.
all the time.
You like to thrival?
I'm a
Thrival
thrival
Goes
kind of
West.
guy.
That's a good movie when we were kids. Anyways, and I think that sometimes it's hard to even understand if you're surviving or
Yeah,
thriving.
you may not know.
But I think as a leader, where you see if you are thriving or surviving as a leader is how your people are doing. If your people are thriving, if you see them coming in happy, you see them doing a good job at work, right? You're thriving as a manager. Whether you feel like you're hitting numbers or not, who cares about that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing your job as a leader, you see your people growing. You see your people thriving.
Yeah, they're getting leadership roles. They're moving on and promoting in life. They're, like you said, the main things, they're coming in happy. If you're surviving, you are just strictly, your anxiety's high, your stress level's high. You can be a leader in a stressful environment and not be stressed out.
Right. Well, I think too, when your employees are thriving, like I said before, don't worry about the numbers. Of course you have to. But when your employees are thriving, they're gonna
You're hitting the numbers.
You're hitting the numbers.
Yeah, you're hitting the numbers.
Doesn't matter if it's sales, operations, whatever.
None of
You're
that
gonna
matters.
be hitting what you need to. Like it's gonna happen because
goals will be met.
Yeah. Happy people, productive people, successful people hit those numbers mainly because they're happy, they feel supported. So Josh, this has been a really good conversation. There's so much to talk about here, so much meat on the bone, if you will, to talk through. But we're running close to time for today. But I can't wait to continue talking about all things leadership with you, brother.
I agree. And we would like for you to join us next week where we're going to talk about conflict management, do's and don'ts. And remember, every great decision starts with a conversation. So we invite you to sit at the table.
Have a great week, everybody.
Peace out.